All right, so I said I would talk about the other piece of news, and it was a kind of sneaky bit of news that came out of this HAYLEY ATWELL article, and that is that apparently Marvel wanted to do a solo film with Chris Evans before Doomsday. So, and it's a very small sentence, but I think the implications of this are so interesting and so big that I think it deserves its own little segment here to talk about it, because Chris Evans apparently was set to return before Avengers Doomsday, and this is not including Deadpool and Wolverine. Maybe this is why he was in Deadpool and Wolverine, because he was like, well, I'm not really doing anything with Marvel right now, but I'd like to be, so let's just make this happen with Deadpool and Wolverine. Who knows? But apparently, Chris Evans was set to have another solo film before Avengers Doomsday, and then, it would lead into his appearance in Doomsday. And that's it. That's really all we know. But again, the implications here are so big. So first of all, this means that a solo project with Chris Evans was in the work for a long time, because, just with the production, right, how long a production go from pre-production to, conceptualization to the finished product is years, right? So just the fact that they were throwing this idea around, and apparently it had, was gaining some steam, because the article says that the only reason this didn't happen was because a story was not nailed down. So this means it was almost immediately after Endgame, I'd have to imagine. Probably after COVID, right? After the main waves of COVID, like in 2021 or 2022, they probably had some sort of idea, because then, if they had an idea at that point, then the film wouldn't even have come out until 2024 or so. And that's interesting because, originally these Avengers films were supposed to come out in 2025 and 2026. Or actually, originally, both Avengers films were supposed to come out in 2025, which is crazy that it was even a concept. And then, 2025, 2026, and now 26 and 27. So there is that. But yeah, I would suspect then that this means this idea was being thrown out almost immediately after Phase 4 kicked off. And that's interesting because, Chris Evans had said, oh, I love this character. I'd be very protective of him and all that sort of stuff. And it's totally his right to say that. And I actually agree with him. I think be protective of your character. Be protective of his legacy. Honestly, if Robert Downey Jr. only came back to play a variant of Iron Man, like we talked about before with the HAYLEY ATWELL news, and he just did it to get a paycheck, I would be disappointed, honestly, because his character had such a beautiful ending in Avengers Endgame. So there's that. But I guess Chris Evans, first of all, wanted to come back to the MCU much quicker than we originally had thought, right? It's not like a Deadpool and Wolverine. This is a solo film that he's committing to, as well as Avengers Doomsday. Or I guess, I wonder if it was Avengers Kang Dynasty that he was going to be in at the beginning. I don't know. Because apparently, I saw a rumor, and again, this I don't even know where it came from, so just take this with a grain of salt. Take this with a massive grain of salt. But I saw a rumor somewhere that was like, originally the plot of Kang Dynasty was the Avengers, fighting evil Avengers or something like that. I don't know. I don't even know if that's true. But maybe that was the case, and maybe that's what Chris Evans was returning for. But, it's interesting because he talks about, also, I think it talks about the fact that HAYLEY ATWELL is going to be a part of this solo project. So it's interesting because I don't know what this solo project even was, because I'm sure they were developing Captain America 4. They obviously had developed Falcon and the Winter Soldier, probably while they were doing Endgame and Infinity War, they were developing Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So they knew they were going to have another Captain America. But then to have Chris Evans come back, and it's interesting because every single time this story is brought up, they never mention the name Captain America. It's always just a project. Chris Evans, HAYLEY ATWELL, but they're never saying Captain America, because I think they want to be protective of the fact that Sam Wilson is now the Sacred Timeline's Captain America, and I think that it would cheapen it, if another variant of Steve Rogers just showed up out of the multiverse and whatnot. But who knows? There are rumors that he was playing, he's going to be playing Nomad in Avengers Doomsday, and maybe this was a solo Nomad film. I don't know why you would do this. I think that there are so many other films you could and maybe should be doing. I'm going to keep saying this until my voice goes hoarse, but where is Shang-Chi 2? Why couldn't we have been doing a Shang-Chi 2? Anyways, but I think it's interesting that they were planning on doing this. Now, the question then becomes for me, is this still in the works? Because apparently this was, the only reason this didn't happen was because a story did not get nailed down. But what if? Well, so let's just say, for example, Chris Evans is playing a very different version of Steve Rogers. Like, he's just playing a Nomad version of Steve Rogers, and he's not going to be Captain America. He's not going to conflict with Sam Wilson in that way. It's a variant, whatever. Like, whatever. It's not Captain America. Is there still a plan to have a solo Chris Evans film post Secret Wars? Is that still in the plans? I don't know if the fact that it now takes place after Secret Wars has changed that, because maybe, the story wasn't nailed down to begin with, and now the story, can be changed and they can make it work. Is there a willingness from Chris Evans' part to do this? Is he committing to being a part of the next saga of the MCU, the Mutant Saga? Maybe he takes a break a little bit from the multiverse saga, and then he comes back for Deadpool and Wolverine, and he comes back for Doomsday and Secret Wars, but maybe he's just taking a little bit of a break, and then he wants to come back full time in the mutant saga. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Maybe he's playing a mutant. I don't know. But I think all this is interesting because it seems like all these things, right? We kind of had assumed that Avengers, Doomsday, and Secret Wars would be pretty full of, I'm not going to say cameos, but recurring legacy characters, right? I would assume, honestly, I would be shocked if all 6 of the legacy actors who played the original 6 Avengers didn't show up. I don't know if they're going to be playing their original characters. Like, I think Black Widow is very dead in the Sacred Timeline. Obviously can be brought back in a different variety of different ways. Gamora was brought back, right? I think Chris Evans is coming back, Robert Downey Jr. is coming back, and then I'm sure Jeremy Renner, in whatever capacity he's physically capable of, obviously after his horrific accident, but he looks like he's doing great at this point. So whatever capacity he's able to do, maybe even just as a mentor figure to some of these younger Avengers, fine. Right? I'm sure Mark Ruffalo's coming back. He comes back in anything that they ask him to do, which I think is great. I don't think that that's a bad thing. And I'm sure Chris Hemsworth is going to come back because I'm sure he wants redemption from Thor Love and Thunder. He's talked publicly. This isn't just me saying this as someone who doesn't like Thor Love and Thunder. He's talked publicly about the fact that he wants another shot at it. So I'm sure all 6 legacy actors will be back, including probably Nick Fury after Secret Invasion. Who even knows what happened to him after that, and the Marvels. But yeah, I think it's interesting now to think about the fact that in a post-Secret Wars world, we could still be seeing Chris Evans be a pretty major part of Marvel going forward. And does that have to do with his relative quiet, career after Endgame, a lack of success? I know he did a movie called The Gray Man, he's doing Red One, but I don't think he's really done a movie that was super. I guess Knives Out counts. Like, Knives Out was, I think, right after Avengers Endgame, and I loved Knives Out. But like the real post Endgame career, maybe it just hasn't taken off in the same way that he'd have likened it to, and maybe he's just willing to come back to Marvel. I don't know, guys. You'll have to let me know in the comments down below. What do you think about the news that Chris Evans was apparently going to get a solo film before Doomsday, and do you think it's still going to happen? I think that's the big question. Let me know in the comments down below.